And welcome again to another episode of King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake. My name is Michael Laurier, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Helen Glover. Say hi to everyone, Helen.
Hi.
And it's good to be with you again today. We're talking about bringing baggage from one relationship into another. And you might have seen on the description, Helen, I'll talk to you now. So you might have seen in the description of this, because you haven't seen the description, I know, because I set all this up this morning. And I liken this to the journey that we might go on a plane. And when we go on a holiday, for instance, we bring our luggage with us, and we might liken the journey of a relationship to the journey that we go on for a holiday, for instance. And every relationship is a journey, isn't it? And so we might step on a plane with our baggage, with our luggage, and then we arrive at our destination, and perhaps that's the end of that particular journey. And we retrieve our luggage off the what's it called, the baggage carousel, and then move on to the next flight, jump on the next plane with the same luggage. And we don't always or often open our luggage, check what's inside, see what we still want and what we still need and what serves us on the next leg of our journey, and before we step on the next one. And so I liken this almost to the journey that we go on between one relationship and another, where we'll have an experience with somebody, we'll go on a journey with them, and then we don't often check what we're bringing into the next journey before we embark on that. That's the analogy I've used this morning anyway. What do you think?
Love it. Nothing worse than packing for Iceland and ending up in Hawaii.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak in? This was a topic that you and I came up with a few weeks ago. And I think it's good because we've all done this. We've all gone from one relationship to another and brought unnecessary parts of our experience into the next one, and then polluted that relationship and often caused some damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've spoke about this bit before, about how we have these incredibly important relationships in our 20s that really are not necessarily well-functioning relationships, because we're all just coming into adulthood and we don't know how to do it yet. And then forming our ideas of relationships and any kind of stuff that you've brought that you're not mature enough to handle in those relationships, then cementing in what your opinion is of the opposite sex, or what you believe is their problem versus your own problem. And it's interesting, I think, as you get older, this has been my experience as I've got older, being more able to look at where my stuff's coming from versus just constantly looking at the other person as being at fault. And so that's really an interesting thing as well, not just to take the baggage with you, but to acknowledge that you actually came in with the bags instead of saying, no, that's not my luggage. Actually, I think somebody took mine and this is a bag I've never seen before. Because like opening it up and like for me, if I open it up and I see a man's jock strap, it's kind of like, well, that's not my baggage. But actually,
that's never happened to me before, Helen. Sounds like you've had some experiences in life.
But this is the thing. It's kind of like looking and actually believing that, does this belong to you or does it belong to another person? And then to be able to navigate that without blame, and you did and he did and she did. And it's really difficult, because what it does is you're actually putting onto somebody the belief that they've done something that your last partner did before they've done it. So it's kind of false accusation before anything's even happened, that you've already decided in your mind that this is the way they're going to behave in this particular situation, without even giving anybody a chance. So it only takes a moment then for that to be proven correct. Because like we always say, you search for evidence to prove yourself to be right, because that's the survival tactic that we have. And we have to fight against that to actually look for evidence that we could be wrong. And
interesting points that you've made. Yeah, interesting points you've made, because you're right. We always find what we look for. We always find what we seek. And that's definitely true in all aspects of life and especially in relationships. And something from psychology called cells of experience, cells of recognition for an experience, right? So you touched on something earlier when we have experiences in relationships in our early 20s and even sometimes, or in our 20s and even before that, even into our 30s as well, sometimes, where we develop beliefs. And you did touch on this. I want to just go a little bit deeper, where we develop beliefs around certain things, around what it means to be in a relationship, what a relationship should look like. And we also have cells of recognition for the experience of observing our parents in relationship as well, and how they conducted themselves and how they communicated and what the choices that they made, the attitudes they had, the beliefs they held, all those sorts of things. So when we go into our first relationship in our early 20s or whenever we do, we already go in with baggage. We already go in with baggage from the experience that we've observed of our parents. And then, of course, we have our own experiences. And some of the things that I've observed in clients and in my own life as well is that some of these things that can really affect us and we fill our bags with are when intimacy goes wrong or when a partner is disloyal in some way. Um, when there's money problems and we have different attitudes and beliefs about money. And then of course that relationship doesn't work out. These are the main things, right? It's usually sex and money. They're usually the two things, and communication as well. They're usually the three things that cause the biggest problems in relationships. And then of course, when you go into the next one, when that one ends, you go into the next one, you have all these beliefs around money, around sex, around intimacy, around boundaries and all sorts of different things, and you enforce things in the new relationship that maybe aren't required because
Yeah.
this is a different person. But
Mm.
based on the experiences that you've had, we assume that, well, what our psychology does is it actually tries to protect us against this new person behaving the same way that the previous person did that hurt us in some way. And so this is really what we're talking about. And so it's really a good thing to do is a bit of an assessment, an audit of our baggage when we exit a relationship or when that ends. We kind of go, what's in here? And we shuffle around and we go, what's in here? Do I still need this? Does this serve me? Is this going to negatively impact my experience of the next relationship and how fully I can love and how fully I can be loved, and what kind of boundaries do I need to put in that honor my own self-respect and my own, standards, if you like, within a relationship, but don't necessarily project the pain and hurt that I've felt before and try and avoid or prevent that from happening again, because that can really dilute the experience.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and there's a couple of things there too that what's interesting is that we need to really be doing that before we enter the next relationship.
Mm,
We need to be growing at the end of a relationship so that we're not just making the choices for the next partner based on old patterns.
mm,
Because essentially, unless we grow within ourselves and we change something that we're doing, we're just going to attract the same person anyway. And then we're going to be proven right again that a very similar person has come into our life doing very similar things, because
mm,
that's essentially what we're attracting, because that's our belief system that then finds that attractive but doesn't want it. So it links into all of these other things.
mm,
And the other point I find is really, really prevalent for our generation is that since we were being brought up with very much that kind of nuclear family of the mum was generally at home and the father was the person who worked, and we grew up with that very, very normal, right?
yep,
And
yep,
then we got into our 20s and it started to change, and then in our 30s it was normal for both parents to work to be able to afford the stuff that we want, and that were the choices that we made.
mm,
And then in the last 10 years it's kind of been impossible to survive without both parents working. And yet we still have this ingrained belief system of gender, of what each gender does. And that causes huge conflict in relationships too, because there's this belief from women that we do need to do it all. And if we don't, that there's kind of something wrong and there's all this guilt. And for men, it's not this kind of underlying fact that they don't think to do it. And so you have to work at that. You have to really want to support each other in being where we are in our society now. And a lot of people that I speak to, like guys and women have the same complaint. A lot of guys think, I don't even think of it. And the underlying in certain parts of society, there's this belief that they don't need to do it. And then there's an underlying belief that women do. And so that causes all this other conflict as well, because we're the first generation who've navigated this completely new way of being with two parents working in the family.
And so, yeah, and so when we talk about baggage that we bring into relationships, this is part of it. It's that
yeah,
generational stuff as well, the stuff that we grew up observing, which is kind of
yeah,
what I touched on before, right? But you put it quite succinctly in that what we grow up with and how we can and how we experience our parents and our upbringing will directly determine how we conduct ourselves in relationship with another person as an adult.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yep,
Mm,
absolutely.
mm, yeah.
Absolutely. Let us know, Jessica. Thanks for watching, everyone. We've got quite a few people watching. We're getting quite popular, Helen. I don't know what's going on. We must be doing something right. Let us know what you can relate to, Jess, because Helen touched on quite a few things in there, which was awesome. Let us know what you can relate to. And if anyone's got any questions, you're watching live and you've got any questions, please let us know. Pop them in the chat because I can see it here. Let us know if you've got any questions or if you'd like us to talk about something in particular around this subject. It's a big subject. It's a big subject. Most people get in, and I've said this so much, right? Most people get into relationships unconsciously and then they stay in them unconsciously and then leave unconsciously and continue that pattern over and over again in life. And
Mm,
what they do is they continue to bring all of their unconscious patterns and behaviors into the new relationships without really being aware of, well, that's the definition of unconscious, right? Because we're not consciously aware of what we're bringing into the next relationship. So how would you think, Helen, I've got some views on this, but I want to ask you, how would you think we can do a bit of an audit of our baggage, do a bit of a shuffle through the bags and see what is real for us, what's true for us, what belongs in the next relationship and what doesn't?
You have to be really willing to see fault. You have to just be really willing to go, I actually was part of that. It's a dynamic, isn't it, that you both bring. And so when we attract the person who we really are that kind of opposites attract, the thing that we really, really love about that person ends up being the thing that we really, really struggle with. Because as much as we're attracted to it because we don't have it in our life or we see it as an admirable quality, it becomes something that's really dysfunctional. And what I mean
Mm,
by that is that when you draw somebody in who is your person, who you're attracted to from all of your last beliefs and all of the hang-ups and everything else, that then actually normally bars against who you've attracted. So if your dynamic and their dynamic create the drama.
mm,
So it doesn't happen one without the other, because one causes this behavior and then that behavior causes this behavior. And it needs both of you to admit that there's something going on. And there's a pride thing in there, like a big pride thing in there where you've got to say, no, I can see where I did that and I can see that that caused this. And that's hard to do unless you really want to pull in something different. Because if you don't want to pull in anything different, people don't pull in anything different. Well, you won't unless you actually really face those truths. And so I think it's almost like taking stock and it's sitting with the discomfort, sitting
mm,
with the squeamishness of it, noticing the triggers when you do start a new relationship, when you start thinking about the person you want. Why do you want that person? Why is this perfect person that you're calling in? What would be the shadow of that person? Why do you want that person? What are you avoiding about yourself by claiming this perfect person?
mm.
So it's really interesting.
Some people might say that's a lot of bloody hard work to do before you get into a relationship, and I might agree with that, but
Mm,
it does help to alleviate some of the pain and trauma that you'll create for yourself and possibly for the other person as well in the new relationship. And one
mm,
of the things that I love to do in all of my discussions with people and coaching and whatever else is, and my own personal life, is to remove the words blame and fault and replace it with responsibility. So I would say that one of the things that we could choose to do is open all of these bags at the end of a relationship and go, what do I need to accept responsibility for? What did I put here? And what did I allow somebody else to put there, right? Because nobody can install trauma into us. We have to be an open space for trauma, heartache, all that sort of stuff. We have to allow that. And so this is really about understanding. And you touched on this too, right? Understanding that it takes two people to create a pleasant experience and an unpleasant experience as well. And so everything is a co-created experience. And so if we can start to open our luggage, open our baggage at the end of a relationship and kind of go, what did I put here myself? And then what did I allow? And then we start to figure out what changes we need to make within ourselves, what responsibility we need to take, and understanding that, yes, everything is a co-created experience, which is really important. We have a question here from Abdul. Abdul, there's Abdul's questions. Don't know if this is related. It absolutely is, Abdul. But how does one enter a new relationship but sometimes feel a little insecure or afraid because of a past relationship experience? So this is absolutely related to the discussion, totally 100%. I might say that this is what we're talking about, taking stock of and doing a bit of an audit of what you're bringing into the new relationship. And so if there's an insecurity there about something, we've got to understand that that's always something that originates within us. Another person could behave a certain way. They could betray us. They could betray trust. They could do all sorts of different things. But it's how we internalize that experience and allow it to affect us in terms of our thinking, how we feel, and our behavior that really determines whether this is going to be something that you choose to carry with you through life. And so insecurity and fear really come from a place of being insecure about the fact that we don't know how to actually handle that particular situation ourselves, and being open to love and being loved, and being open to being held and holding as well, because insecurities only come from a place of within ourselves, whether we can trust ourselves in the experience, that if somebody else creates disharmony, how can we hold ourselves in that? How can we hold ourselves in that? And what are we doing to create an experience within the relationship of insecurity and fear? What would you say, Helen?
Well, insecurity is something that breeds babies in the dark, really. If you don't.
What do you mean by that? Tell us about that, Helen. That's
like,
never heard that one before.
Think that, well, I made it up. That's why.
Oh, breed babies in the dark.
I just
that
feel
brings up so much imagery.
Well, when you have an insecurity and you don't voice it, it's still in the dark. And so you're hiding it in the dark. It's shame and embarrassment from having it.
Sits in the shadow. Sits in the shadow of the relationship.
So it sits in that kind of dark spot of I don't tell somebody that I'm feeling really afraid right now. But I think insecurity and being afraid is a true measure of your gentleness and your ability to love. Because if we're not really insecure about certain things and afraid, we're not really being honest. I don't think we ever walk in something 10 times tall and bulletproof, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we are leaving ourselves exposed when we are open to love. So if we can then voice that to the partner and say, I'm feeling this actually happened for me in my last relationship. This actually happened to me previously, and I really want to just be open about that. And I really want to be able to bring that into the relationship to let you know where that behavior is coming from. And then you work through it. Work through it in a new relationship. And that's what's really special about that. But if you keep an insecurity in the dark, it will breed other insecurities.
Yep, I totally agree with that.
Read into other stuff that doesn't exist, and the fear becomes, and it grows and grows until you've got a whole family that creates this behavior then that causes difficulty within the relationship itself that doesn't really exist, but we've made it.
What would you say, Helen? I want to open a discussion here, because I agree with you, but I also want to put in the other. I want to bring another perspective into this, which I always do to everything. What about self-responsibility? What about if it's instead of the discussion that is, this is what happened to me in the past, and this is why I behave a certain way. What about if we,
Excuse it.
no, it doesn't excuse it, but what if we took such a radical level of self-responsibility where we go, you know what, this thing happened in the past, and I'm going to take responsibility for adjusting my own reaction before I project that onto you. As opposed to, this is what happened to me in the past, and this is why I'm going to treat you badly. I just want to let you know that if I yell at you, that if I raise my voice, if I treat you badly, if I don't respect you, if something like that happens, this is why. What about if we circumvented all of that and took responsibility beforehand and kind of said, this is what happened in the past. This has been my behavior in the past around it. I'm managing it, but I just want you to know that if this particular thing happens, I might go quiet. I might withdraw a little bit, but I'll always come back to you. I'll always respect you. I'll always love you. I'll never act badly. I'll never behave in a way that is untoward. And, you know, that takes a deep level of awareness to be able to do that. And not a lot of people have that, but I might say that we could all learn to develop it. Oh, here we go. Caroline's watching, and she said you would need to have a level of awareness and the ability to self-reflect, which is what we just talked about. So, yeah, absolutely. And she's made another little comment here as well, which I think is funny. I think by the time we reach 30, the baggage is the equivalent of the luggage boarding the Titanic. You've got the parrot, your cabinets, some staff, and a variety of wardrobe changes.
Yeah.
I would so agree with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. Because, and the variety of wardrobe changes is reflective of the fact that we have so many different masks and personas that we might feel that we need in order to emotionally survive within an intimate relationship.
And that's why, I mean, you know, like, if something, for example, if I'm in a relationship now and something happens and I feel it, I then have to go, I'm really sorry about that, but this is what happened in that for me. And this is what, and actually what I've found is it deepens the connection and the relationship, because you trust somebody with something vulnerable. And it doesn't have to be an excuse. It's an awareness that, like, just cut me some slack while I get better at that. It's never an excuse that, like, oh, actually, you know, this is what happened to me, so I'm going to be allowed to behave like this. That's totally it's not right, because we actually, as well, we need to take responsibility for we teach people how to treat us.
Perfect. I was going to say that. I'm so glad you brought it up. Yep.
You know, if you want to yell at me like that, that's okay with me. It's about them reflecting back. Look, I can understand that, or if they're not taking responsibility for what just happened there, because I think that outcome was kind of bigger than what it needed to be. Is there something going on there for you? So that encouraging the person to be vulnerable, because we are all at different stages. We're all not in awareness, and we are growing and becoming more each time we share. And, you know, we are in relationships to grow. If you're not growing within a relationship, then ultimately you're either going to be bored or you'll separate.
Totally.
And a lot of relationships are set up at the beginning, how to treat each other in this naivety.
Absolutely.
And then as people grow and become more powerful in their own right, more independent, they become more successful, and they become more of themselves. If the other person isn't willing to accept that person, then, you know, eventually they will part ways, because ultimately one person will be like, you can't treat me like that anymore. Like, you know, I'm not that girl, or I'm not that boy. I'm this person now. And that is very difficult to navigate. So you have to be open to being in the difficult conversations, to be confronted about stuff that you don't behave well in.
Yep. And I might even say that when you look through your own luggage, at the end of a relationship, and you go into a new relationship, or you're about to start, or the intention is there to start a new relationship, it's always a good thing when we talk about going into a relationship consciously. It might even be a really good thing to say, hey, here's my baggage. I'm going to open my suitcase and show you what's in there. And both people can do this. This is my solution to this, right? Not that it's a 100% fail-safe solution, but I think it certainly would certainly help to alleviate some of the pain and trauma we cause each other in relationships. And that's like, let's open our luggage together side by side and let's just have a little bit of a look in there and a shuffle around and see what's in there. What's acceptable for you? What's a what do you tolerate and what you don't? What don't you? Where does my baggage or my luggage or what I've got in my suitcase, where does that conflict with something in yours? You know, and start to really get clear about who you're getting into a relationship with and what is going to come as once the honeymoon period is over. What does that actually look like for each individual, and how can you manage that, and how can you navigate that together, and what do you need to become aware of? Because as you said, the things we find really cute and adorable at the beginning of a relationship can sometimes be the things that separate people because they become annoyances and frustrations, and they get to a point where, and it's not just the behavior, it's more so the beliefs and the unspoken stuff, that rears its head in the future. So yeah, and yes, Caroline, it really does. It comes down to knowing your wants, needs, and establishing healthy boundaries. Absolutely. And
Mm.
understanding as well that we need to provide for ourselves in relationship, in life in general. We need to establish we need to basically provide for ourselves and not expect somebody else to fill in the gaps for us.
Mm.
Yep.
And as well, you have to be open to really supporting the other person with the belief that it's for both of you. You
Totally.
know, that there's this, yeah, I am willing to be open and give to you because I trust that it's actually for both of us instead of going, I'm not doing that for him, I'm not doing that for her. I did that last time and nobody cared and it didn't do me any good.
Mm.
I'm for me now. And I've heard that a lot.
Yep.
So when we do set new boundaries and we have wants and needs, I think that's so important. And walking in and then going, and so what's a non-negotiable in my wants and needs? What's a non-negotiable on my boundary? And what do I need to compromise on because that doesn't fit who you are and what you want and need? So
Mm.
there's this ability then to really see the other person and value them and what they need as well, and come to that happy medium where everybody's needs are looked at and taken seriously, rather
Yep.
than one person going, no, I'm not doing that. I did that in my last relationship and I'm not doing that again.
Yep.
Well, let's make it look different this time.
That's one of the big ones, isn't it? That's one of the big ones. What would you
Mm,
say, Helen? I have this opinion, and I'll share it with everybody. So I have this opinion that if we use the analogy of the suitcase, I have
mm,
this opinion that when you get into a new relationship, when there's a level of trust there, and you know that it's going to be a long-term thing, or that's the intention, that you should open not just the main part of the suitcase, you should open every zipper, every buckle, undo everything, and let that person see in the deepest, darkest places of yourself and your stuff and who you are as an individual, so that at the very beginning of the relationship, nothing is hidden, and you give the other person the opportunity to choose if they would like to be in a relationship with you after you have exposed every single part of yourself and everything that you believe, everything you value, all the shit that you carry with you, all that sort of stuff. What would you say about that? Do you think that we need to keep secrets from our partner? Do you think there needs to be something sacred within us that we don't share? Or do you believe it all needs to be out on the table so that the person has an opportunity to choose consciously and be fully informed as to who they're getting into a relationship with?
this is why I don't have a boyfriend.
Because you believe the same thing, do you?
Because I think you have to know all the person, and you have to love every part of that person. And even if it's difficult, because you have to love when it's hard. That's
Yep.
the whole point,
And do you think it's
and
do you think do you agree then that it's the do you feel like it's necessary to have those
I think
massive
it's an
discussions
unraveling.
in? Yep.
I think it's an unraveling. I don't think you just meet somebody, because not everybody deserves your truth. Really, I really believe that. I don't think
Mm.
everybody deserves my truth. I think I need to protect who I am and only give it to people I really think are worthy of knowing me on that level. So I think it's up to you how you unravel into a relationship. But if you are looking for something long term and you've been together and the trust is building and you unravel different parts of yourself, but there should be nothing that you feel is hidden or can't be told. That, if you're going in thinking this part of me isn't going to be accepted, well, you just need to do some work on that, because
Yep.
hiding that is going to cause its own level of ramification.
Yep. Because it always comes out, doesn't it? Everything always comes to the surface. And I think the
Yeah.
most damaging thing that I've observed in relationships in coaching is that it's like people get 5, 6, 10 years into a relationship, and then all of a sudden this big revelation happens, right? Somebody says something about their past or how they feel or what they value that comes totally out of left field. And it's one of those things that is really, really important. And you go, well, why didn't you share that at the beginning of the relationship or the beginning stages of the relationship? It's like, because I didn't know, I wasn't sure how he or she was going to react, and I didn't want to cause problems. It's like, well, bigger problem now.
But it's like
Bigger
it's almost the script to any movie, isn't it? Where you're sitting
Yeah,
there
it
going,
is.
tell her, just tell him. Oh my
Yeah,
God, because you know at some point they're going to fall out because one of them hasn't said what's actually happened, you know.
yep,
So
yep,
yeah,
totally,
yeah, you're
totally.
absolutely right, Caroline. It does.
Yep,
And that's why you need to be with a person that you really know that can go there with you. Otherwise, it
mm,
leaves you feeling really exposed and vulnerable, and that leaves you feeling hurt. And then that hurt then cements a belief that you can't be heard within that relationship, or that you feel silly or embarrassed or whatever. And it's
yep,
just, it creates another level of protection that you don't need.
yep, agreed. Thanks for that feedback, Abdul. Caroline said something else as well. Yes, but being vulnerable from the very beginning will prevent entertaining a relationship that won't go anywhere. What are your thoughts on that, Helen?
Being vulnerable from the beginning prevents entertaining a relationship that won't go anywhere.
Do you think we need a bit more context around that before
Yeah,
we
I can't
speak into
work
it?
that one out, actually.
Yeah, just quickly bash out a bit more context to that for us, Caroline, in the comments here, if you don't mind, and we'll definitely address that. But I think where she might be going with that, and I'm just going to assume, is that when you're open and vulnerable at the very beginning of the relationship, perhaps you almost sabotage a relationship that could be because you share too much of yourself too quickly, and people go, "Whoa, that's too much in the first 2 dates," for instance. But I think, and I could be wrong. So, what's that?
That's why I say it's an unraveling.
It's a gradual unraveling, but I think the gradual part needs to be in the beginning stages of a relationship and over the first, I would say over the first 2 to 3 months, really. And it's kind of like, I think you should know who you're getting into a relationship with. These are my beliefs. These are my values. This is what I want for the future. This is what really annoys me. These are the things that I think about, in my darkest hours. And it's a constant unraveling, but absolutely, I think we need to become very consciously aware of who we're getting into a relationship with and who we're being in relationship to.
We've got 6 months of the love bubble to get it all out.
Yep. Yeah, you're right, actually, because you're right, not 2 to 3, but the honeymoon period usually lasts for about 6 months, doesn't it?
6 months where the endorphins are in the brain. And that is really so that we look at all of the beauty and all of the goodness about that person so that we're going to procreate, right? Because
Yep.
that's the whole point of it. Like historically, we have that love bubble so that we'll be attracted to somebody to continue the human race. But so we need to take advantage of that to use this kind of time to really trust and unravel and hope that then that will then traverse to being really seen and loved and cared about gently with those things as we move into the next part.
Yep. And as individuals, just while we're waiting for Caroline, I want to speak into something else, but as individuals as well, we've got to be prepared to continue to do the work on ourselves. And we have to also provide space for our partner to do the work on themselves as well, because as we work on ourselves as individuals, we by default create a better quality, deeper connection with our partner and a better quality relationship as well. Okay, here she is. Here she is. So, vulnerability and exposure is a sign of strength overall. No one of value will entertain making fun of another as it makes them an a-hole. Yep. Agreed. And this is about what you choose to tolerate and accept in relationship and what you don't. And speaks into what you said before as well, Helen. We we teach people how to treat us. And so if people are treating us badly, it's their responsibility for being an a-hole, as Caroline says. But it's also our responsibility that we allowed that in the first place.
Mm, mm.
Yep.
Yeah. I hear
Yep.
people all the time say, oh, I was never allowed to do this, or I was never allowed to do that. And I'm like, well, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's been another good discussion, Helen. And once again, we've gone over time. I know we try to keep these things to 20 minutes, but who cares? It's like 35 minutes, and these are good discussions. And people seem to love it. So that's good. If you have any suggestions on any topics that you'd like Helen and I to talk about in the future, let us know. We've got a whole list that we're going to get through over the next few episodes, which is awesome. But if you've got any suggestions, let us know. If you've got any comments on this or any questions, let us know as well. But we are so looking forward to seeing everyone again on the next episode of King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake.
Thanks so much, everyone. That was terrific.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Michael.